Hello and welcome to Sideways. This week we're talking about something a lot of us have probably felt in the past few months, and why being on our own is something we need to be comfortable with. Martin is disparaging about cakes, and he reveals an important fact about tongues. A cure for loneliness.
Hello.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Well, yes, it's quite a late one, isn't it, to be recording?
It is a bit, but you know, it's been a busy day.
I can see. Well, yeah, it's gone 9:30 now. I mean, it's. I know it's been very busy, as I understand, for you. You've been watching Bake Off for one, haven't you? Which took a large chunk of your evening up.
Yeah, well, it's disgraceful. I don't know why Rowan didn't go home.
I don't know what you're talking about, mate, but I'm sure you get great pleasure from watching it. Yeah, when you said we weren't going to do the recording this evening, we'd have to defer to tomorrow. I was playing a bit of Grand Theft Auto, to be honest.
Oh, were you? Oh, yeah. How are you getting on now?
Well, it can take up large chunks of your time if you're not careful. Very addictive.
Yeah, you should be a little bit careful.
I've got to be very careful with that. I mean, you fed me the game. You're my game dealer, and so you're making me play something.
You readily accepted it.
I did. Yeah, I'll admit that.
Don't hold me responsible for your weaknesses.
I'm an addict. That's what we do best.
Never mind all that. What would you?
Yeah, come on.
Because we can't faff about. It's bedtime.
It is very late. Well, one of the what I wanted to talk about one of the acronyms, all right, that is often trotted out at our recovery meetings is HALT.
As in
HALT.
stop.
As in stop. HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Hang on, I've got to write that down. Hungry, lonely, angry, tired. Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah, the angry comes before lonely. Otherwise, it'd be HALAT, which is not a very good acronym. But I prefer HALT.
Yeah, there's no need to take the piss out of my dyslexia.
I know it's late, mate. Yeah, I'll give you a bit of latitude on that one. I prefer HALT, mate. I'm going to go with the one which we all understand, apart from you.
Okay.
Obviously, those are sort of they're four feelings that are regularly associated with cravings.
Yeah,
that can lead to lapsing, and so we have to be careful when they arise.
Yeah.
So, and in a previous episode, we've touched on anger.
Yes.
So we did one on anger, didn't we?
Yeah.
And so on this one, I wanted just to talk to you about loneliness.
Yeah.
If I may, and just to see if you can come up with any pearls of wisdom associated with this particular topic. I know. And it might be a long shot, you know. I might be asking a bit too much, but I thought I could tap into your vast depths of knowledge to see if you can come up with something which is interesting.
Does that mean we're also going to do one on hungry and tired?
At some point, if you like, yeah. I'm tired. We could do right now, probably, can we?
Okay, so yeah, right. So lonely. So loneliness. I kind of understand that hunger and anger and fatigue would be triggers, particularly if they're happening simultaneously.
Yes.
But, tell me about loneliness then. Well,
we always say that that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, but rather connection, which is what we try and achieve with the Aspire to Be charity to run the meetings to get people connected. And I think loneliness has become quite a hot topic recently, hasn't it, during lockdown? And that's sort of resulted in a huge spike in substance abuse and alcohol problems, which sort of validates the use of that acronym.
Yeah.
But I think probably an important point here is to look at the difference between loneliness and solitude. Yeah. Because sitting well with your own company in your own company is a big change for a recovering addict. We spent many years on. You tend to find towards when the addiction is really taken hold, and towards the end point before you take the decision to either go into recovery or die. Loneliness is it's a massive issue.
Yeah. It's interesting actually, because before we started this evening, I was chatting to my children, and Tom, my eldest, he said, I said I was going to do the podcast tonight, and he said, "Oh, can I be on it?" And I said, "Oh, well, have you got anything interesting to say?" And he said to me, "What's the subject?" And I said, "Well, I think Martin wants to talk about loneliness." And then there was a little pause, and I said, "Right, I think that tells me everything I need to know." And then I said to him, "So, what would you say is a good cure for loneliness?" And he said, "Do you know what he said?"
Go to the pub.
It's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said. And I said, yeah, that'll play out really well on a podcast about addiction and recovery, won't it? But why am I saying this? I think because there is this, this point that you're making about the difference between solitude and loneliness is really important, because somebody once said, and I can't remember who it was, I think it might have been Daniel Kitson, that other people are not the cure for loneliness. They're often the cause of it. And I think there's a kind of reference there to something else you'd said about it being important for you to feel okay in your own company. Because when you don't feel okay in your own company, it's pretty hard ever to feel properly connected. But the upside is that if you can find a way of feeling okay in your own company, you never feel alone, because you've always got yourself. And I think the journey, I can't believe I've used the word journey, blimey. The transition from feeling uncomfortable with yourself to the point at which you feel comfortable with yourself is for many people, probably most people, quite an arduous journey. And if you throw recovery from any sort of addiction into the mix, it makes it even harder still.
Yeah, it does. It is a transition. And I think all the time our addiction is active, we're never going to make that transition. We're always going to be sitting exactly where we are. We stay still emotionally.
Yeah.
When we're drinking heavily and taking drugs, we don't progress at all. And we're at a point in our lives where we really do hate ourselves. We've got no time for ourselves at all. Our self-esteem is on the floor, and being alone at that point, it's a strange one, because you sort of crave connection, but then you don't want to be going outside. You get this sort of feeling that you don't want other people to be judging the way you drink. And so on the one hand, you crave being alone because no one is going to be able to tell you off, or no one's going to point their finger and say, I think you're drinking a bit too much. And on the other hand, we feel incredibly lonely. So I found one of the real joys of recovery was actually getting to the point, I live on my own, I'm single, and I really enjoy my solitude now. And it is solitude rather than loneliness.
To be honest, you're difficult to be around at the best of times.
Well, I certainly think I'd rather be on my own than sitting around yours, to be honest. But yeah, that's true.
Or watching Bake Off.
But I'm watching Bake Off. What is all that about? I mean, I'd rather, I don't know. I think I'd rather listen to a Backstreet Boys album on repeat. I think sitting in a bath full of angry scorpions. Watch Bake Off. Have I emphasised that enough?
Yeah, I think that's fairly clear. Anyway, you've got us off the point now. Going back to the point about craving connection when you're in active addiction. I think the thing about being in addiction is that you aren't really ready for connection, are you, when you're in addiction? Because you're always, as we've discussed before, you're always blocking emotion out, and you can't really find connection until you're willing to be vulnerable, both with yourself and with other people. And funny enough, I was having a conversation with someone quite recently about this very subject, about there's this kind of cruel irony where you get yourself into a double bind. If you feel bad about yourself, the likelihood is you will put a wall up to stop other people seeing who you are. And of course, if you put a wall up to stop other people seeing who you are, the fact that they can't see you means they can't connect with you, which means you can't get the connection that you crave. So you put the wall up to try and stay emotionally safe so that people can't judge you. But actually, the only thing that results from that wall being up is that you ensure that you aren't emotionally safe because you just remain isolated.
I think you're right. I mean, I think when you're in that state, you feel completely unlovable. And I think, we can't expect other people to love or to like ourselves or to like us when we don't even like ourselves. I mean, it's a real tough one.
But we do, don't we? And I think that's precisely it. And that's the problem. Because when we feel like that about ourselves, we go out into the world just wanting someone to love us.
Yeah.
We're desperate for someone to show us that we matter, that we're valuable, that we can be cared about. But the problem is, it doesn't matter who shows us that affirmation, that love, it will never fill the space left by the person that we're really waiting to love us, which is ourselves.
Yeah, good point. It is a good point. I mean, I think it's a good point here in the episode to interject a quote, if I may. I like a quote from time to time.
Yeah, it's very unusual for you to come up with a quote.
I don't think I've used one in the last couple of episodes, so it's high time. And I'm going to use one from F. Scott, not Brian Clough. No one football related. It's from an American novelist actually called F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I know him.
Well, it really resonates with me. And I think it sort of sums up the hopelessness you feel when your addiction is rampant and you can't stop the carnage. And he said, the loneliest moment in someone's life is when they are watching their whole world fall apart and all they can do is to stare blankly.
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling. I remember that feeling that everything was falling apart around my ears and I had no motivation to stop it. I couldn't stop it because I couldn't stop drinking.
Mm.
And the loneliness at that point was incredible. I think it was the loneliest I'd felt for many, many years. I think it was probably it was the lowest point since my family sort of fell apart around me when they were sort of dying off. When I felt incredibly vulnerable, but and then my descent into addiction, which can be partially attributed to those bereavements. So I think I got to a point where I don't think I've ever felt more lonely. So I think there's only one way to go from there, and going into recovery. I'd hit that point where I couldn't be any lower than I was.
Well, you could have died.
I think that was my only option left at that point. It was either death or recovery.
Well, I think the reason I think it's important to recognise that is because I often hear people say that they reached this point where they didn't really have any choice but to kind of get better, and to me that when people say that, they're kind of denying themselves some important validation, because you always have a choice. You always have the choice to continue to let go of yourself to the point at which you no longer exist. You always have that choice. So however low you've got, however bad things have got, when you finally decide, actually, maybe I am worth more than this. Maybe I am worth saving. It's almost like that's the first sign that there is that little voice inside you that says, actually, you're all right. You're all right. You could be all right. You're worth protecting. Sometimes we don't even know where that voice is coming from or why it's appeared. Sometimes that voice has always been there, but we've never listened to it or never heard it. But, that's to me, it's such a kind of pivotal moment when something happens that makes us say, actually, I've got to try and get hold of this now. That if ever there was an illustration of self-love, that must be it. So going back to something you said earlier about looking for pearls of wisdom, fundamentally, this is going to disappoint you, but I don't think I've got any. But one thing that I would say is everybody that has taken that step into recovery is already showing the sort of self-compassion and self-love that they need in order to not feel lonely, because they've done something to save themselves, which is the sort of thing we do when we care about ourselves.
Yeah, we do, but it is that point. You're making those decisions. Right, you do have a decision to make at that point. It is you do still have choices, and when you decide to go into recovery, you're probably at that point where we always say that that an addict in his or her own company, is in very bad company. If you're sitting on your own, I think it's summed up as well. I'm going to use another quote here from Jean-Paul Sartre, one of my favourite French philosophers. What do you think? Is he in your top three French philosophers?
Oh yeah, I've just got a feeling of chills coming over me because you're going to ask me later on what I've learned this week, I expect.
Yeah.
I'm not really able to tell you anything.
I probably am. You better start thinking it whilst we're finishing off here, whilst we're progressing. Anyway, what Jean-Paul Sartre said was, if you're lonely when you're alone, then you're in very bad company. Yeah. So a very similar thing to that we use in addiction. And I think it is very true, isn't it? And it backs up what we've been saying earlier on.
It does. I remember writing a piece on my blog probably 2 or 3 years ago now, called "Why Loneliness is Not the Same as Being Alone," because I think it's very easy for us to mistake one for the other, and they're very, very different. Being alone sometimes is delightful, but being lonely isn't. We have to be able to survive and thrive on our own, because there are bound to be periods of our lives through circumstance, even if it's only for short periods of time, where we're going to be alone, even if it's for an afternoon. There are people that I work with who can't be, if they're on their own in the house, they have to have some sort of sound. They've got to have the radio on or the television on or music or whatever. They can't just have nothing. And, that always makes me question, well, what's going on then? Why can you not be on your own with your own thoughts?
Yeah, you're right. When I was looking at a few bits on YouTube when I was looking about loneliness, etc., and Russell Brand was talking exactly about that point where people come in from work into an empty house and they turn the telly on, they put some noise on because they feel it's company. But he said the best time is really, that's a great time to sit with your own thoughts for a while, where you can sort of connect with yourself, and it is quite a valuable time. It's almost like a meditation, if you like. It gives you opportunity to meditate at that time. He was talking about prayer as well, but it was mainly that time where you can be alone with your thoughts, and you can sort a lot of stuff out at that point. But I think, when you're in active addiction, you don't ever get that. You never get to that point because, the demons in your head are so strong. They're telling you that they talk loudest when you're alone. And I think that, which is why, hence why connection is so vital, and it's so essential.
It kind of makes me think of something that people often say to me when there is this recognition that they don't necessarily have a very positive self-image. And it's an understandable question, but people will say, well, yeah, but how do I feel better about myself? How do I change that? And of course, I can't give them an answer because, it would be like if I say to you, well, you've made that transition because there was a point at the height of your drinking when you felt pretty lousy about yourself, right?
Yeah.
And these days you feel much better about yourself. So you've
Absolutely.
made that transition. There's been a transition that's happened there and is ongoing for you. But I bet if someone said to you, oh, okay, great, well, I need to do that. How do you do it? You wouldn't be able to answer that, would you?
Not very easily. I mean, I can go through pretty much what we talked, if we're looking in terms of recovery, to go through what we talked about in our last episode, and the routes through to recovery, which starts to then to give you your self-esteem back and then builds up your own self-value and self-worth.
But if you went back to that, if you went back to your description of your route, that was yours. It worked for you because however you did it, you found the direction that worked. But if you this is kind of part of the problem I have with self-help. People, the self-help industry is massive, and people fall over themselves to buy self-help books. Really, self-help books are only of limited value because at best they're someone else telling you how they did something. It doesn't work with us as human beings. We have to find you can use them as a kind of as a blueprint, a guide, if you like, but you have to find your own way. And so when we're trying to work out how to feel better about ourselves, you can't look at how someone else did that, even if they're able to describe it to you and say, well, that's all right, I'll go and do that. But it has to start with, I think, a desire to want to feel different about yourself. You have to feel like, well, even if I'm not sure right now that I'm worth caring about and taking care of, why don't I suspend my disbelief that I am and see if I can make a go of it? Because what the hell have I got to lose? Because it's not great feeling the way I do about myself now.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think another quote that Russell Brand used.
That's 3 quotes now.
Oh, no, I've got some more. Oh. Don't worry, there's more. I said like Jimmy Cricket then. Do you remember him? Come here, there's more. He wasn't very funny, really, was he?
No.
Anyway, Russell Brand said that he said he didn't give up the drugs, he gave up the person that used to take the drugs, which I think is quite an important distinction because, putting down drink and drugs is one thing, but changing everything about yourself to ensure that you don't go back down that route is entirely enough. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to redefine. You have to search for a new identity. And I think that that move, I think that identity change for me was amply illustrated by where loneliness did turn to solitude when I was in my own company.
Yeah, if I were talking to Russell Brand, I don't very often, but if I were, I would say to him, actually, I think what happened, Russell, because I'd call him Russell.
Russ.
Brandy, I might call him. I would say to him, I'm not sure you did. What did he say? Give me the quote again.
He said, I didn't give up the drugs. I gave up the person that took the drugs.
Yeah, you see, I would say to him, I'm not sure you did give up the person that took the drugs. I think what you did was you started loving the person that took the drugs. And that was the problem. We can't jettison a part of ourselves. The part of ourselves that is addicted, that is destructive. And my belief is that we don't do that because we want to destroy ourselves, or if we're doing it because we want to destroy ourselves, that's what we think we deserve. It's like there is some sort of positive intent. So that part of us effectively is acting out, trying to be destructive. If you can kind of embrace that part, bring that part in, you can kind of tame it, and it won't then need to act out anymore. It's like a child acts out if it feels like it's not getting the love it needs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Sorry, did you lose me there slightly?
Yeah. You having some technical problems there, or is it the lateness of the hour? Are you about to turn into a pumpkin or something?
No, it's just my battery was running low.
What, you personally or your phone?
Oh, probably a bit of both, mate. Yeah. But yes, no, I agree. I agree with what you're saying, and I think that that point about giving up the person or giving up the drugs or whatever. I mean, I quite liked the way it sort of illustrated the changes you go through at that stage, because I'm a completely different person to the person that used to drink heavily all the time.
Yeah,
everything is about me has changed, emotionally and mentally has changed. I'm a completely different animal than when I was before.
Yeah, you still don't like American rock though.
That'll never change. I don't think there isn't a rehab course that's strong enough to get that. I can't detox out of that one. that hatred. It's not hatred really. It's just it's extreme dislike.
Although you do still like crooners.
I do actually. I've actually chosen a guilty pleasure song as well that. I know we decided we weren't going to do any more, but I have got one which is not a crooner at the end. But I'll come to that in a minute because I've got one more quote I wanted to throw into the mix.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like your quotes.
I've done a bit of research this week. I've come up with a few quotes that I like. Sometimes I can do the research and I see quotes there that are either completely irrelevant, really, or I can't make fit what we're trying to achieve. But this one was particularly good. It's from Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh yeah.
Now he had problems. He had addiction. He was an alcoholic and he was an opium user. So some of his writings and his poetry sort of reflects that. And I think that one of the quotes he said, which goes back to what you were saying, I have absolutely no pleasure in the stimulants in which I sometimes so madly indulge. It has not been in the pursuit of pleasure that I have perilled life and reputation and reason. It's been the desperate attempts to escape from torturing memories, from a sense of insupportable loneliness and a dread of some strange impending doom. No, I related to a lot of that as well. The one thing I just wanted to touch on there was you said, a sense of insupportable loneliness. And I couldn't quite work out whether it was insupportable from other people or from himself on that. I couldn't come to. I suppose I couldn't quite see what he was pointing at. I think it's slightly ambiguous.
Maybe it's both, because when you feel that sort of abject loneliness, it is insupportable from other people, because it doesn't matter what sort of attention you get from other people, it will never fill that gap, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It can feel insupportable from yourself, because it's almost like it becomes self-fulfilling, because you don't want to relieve yourself from that loneliness because you feel so bad about yourself in the first place. That's the really difficult thing about loneliness. When we feel, if the loneliness is coming from some sort of emotional disconnection from ourselves, if we feel as if we're not worth loving or saving, the loneliness that comes from that is so difficult to overturn, because the only solution to it is to kind of turn away from the fundamental belief that we have about ourselves. That's why it's so hard. That's why something significant has to change.
Yeah, it is. And I think that looking back on it, the retrospect on that period of my life, we've talked about it before, but I was almost comfortable in that, in the hatred of myself and the loneliness. I'd learned to accept that position. And I'd been there I was there for a long time, and it was the moving away from that, even though it was a very destructive position I was in, moving away from that was really difficult.
Yeah,
and the motivation to get away wasn't there. It took an enormous amount of strength to get to move even slightly away from that position that I was in.
Yeah, it's like when people come to therapy, if they've got a real significant issue with their own self-image, it's a massive step to come to therapy, because a lot of people feel like they don't deserve it. They feel like they're unworthy. It feels self-indulgent.
Yeah.
And people who have a kind of real low opinion of themselves see kind of self-love as a binary choice between that and self-hatred. I've either got to be selfless or or I must be completely selfish. But of course, it's not like that at all.
It's not. But it almost seemed to me at the time that if I was going to give myself any credit or love at all, it almost felt like arrogance. Because talking about what you said before, it was almost like I didn't deserve it anyway. I didn't deserve to be anything other than sitting exactly where I was in that absolute abject misery.
Right. And so on the one hand, when you consider that picture, it's remarkable that anybody ever gets out of that, because they've got themselves caught in a perpetual cycle. So on the one hand, there's something very dispiriting about that. But on the other hand, we see people, you're an example, we see people all the time that have managed to break free of that. It's impossible to ever tell anybody else exactly how it's done. But what we can say is we know that it is done because people do it. So, when you lose, nobody needs to lose hope of being able to turn away from that feeling of loneliness that comes from feeling that nobody else cares about you and you don't care about yourself. It's like you almost have to hang in there and have faith that it can be done.
Yeah, you do have to white knuckle it at some points there. Yeah, but which is why, going back to what we said right at the top of the episode, really, it's why connection is so important, to connect with people that have done it and are around you to not to tell you how it's done particularly, but to support you whilst you make your own decisions. And I think whilst you're around other people that are have been successful in their recovery or are continuing to put their condition into remission, it can be enormously helpful.
Yeah, wasn't Les Gray, the lead singer of Mud? He was lonely this Christmas, wasn't he?
He was very lonely this Christmas. There's loads of songs about loneliness. I should have looked a few of those up, really, shouldn't I?
Well, not really, because if you start listing them, then you're kind of cutting down my options for a theme tune.
Ah, yeah, true. Are you thinking one in your own heads as we've been going through?
I haven't.
A, of whatever something you've learnt this week, but B, what intro and outro track you could use or play?
I usually, my usual routine is to think about it on my dog walk on a Wednesday morning.
Oh, right, okay.
So I usually have a chat with Daisy about it, see what she thinks.
Yeah, got to run it by her, definitely.
Yeah, she doesn't say much, but she's a good sounding board. And then, I just take it from there.
Yeah, well, she should come up with the right answer for you, certainly. But changing the subject slightly, did you watch that documentary on Freddie Flintoff last night, Living with Bulimia?
No, you WhatsApped me and asked me that, so you're deliberately asking me again because you know that I didn't.
No, your reply was, I'm not watching it at the moment, but I will watch it at some point.
Well, I've only had 24 hours. Give me a chance.
Well, you should have watched that. It was much more important than Bake Off. So I think you've got to get your priorities right.
Not really, because for me, it's a bit of a busman's holiday.
I suppose it is. Just there were some great points that came up. We will discuss it in a later episode. Some of the points that come up in that documentary.
That's fine.
And I was also thinking we ought to get your son onto one of the podcasts if he's going to bring something material to the table. What could
we talk to him about?
I don't know. Well,
we'll think of something.
We can do. I'm his godfather, so I ought to be sitting down and giving him a few chats about life in general.
Well, I sent you a photo, didn't I, on Sunday of him after a night out he had on Saturday, and it was about 2:30 in the afternoon. He was on the sofa under a blanket. He hadn't eaten anything all day, and he'd just about been able to sip some water, and that was drink related. Yeah,
well, yes. See, I need to have a strong word with him. In fact, I've got to be a role model for him in this situation to get him out of this binge drinking that he's getting involved in.
Yeah, I'm a bit disappointed with the role you're playing in his life, letting him go out and do that sort of stuff.
I know. I'm letting him down. I'm letting myself down as well, aren't I? Anyway, yeah. So, is there anything that you've learnt this week that you didn't know before that since our last episode that's cropped?
Well, actually, yes. Yeah, I can tell you something I've learnt. I've learned how to make a mille-feuille.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, well, you because you're a bit common, if you went into a supermarket, you go into the cake section, they'd be cream slices.
Oh, right, okay. Do they do them down Aldi's?
They do. I think they do them in Aldi's, actually. But I'd never made them before, and I made them at the weekend, so I've learned how to do that. It probably wasn't what you were looking for, but it's cake-related, so I know that.
And the reason you haven't sent any across to me is?
Forgot.
Forgot. Yeah, that's good enough. I'm happy with that. Well, I've learnt that, like fingerprints, everyone has a unique tongue print.
How the hell did you learn that?
So be careful where you put your tongue because it's got a unique print attached to it.
Well, you don't want to be putting your tongue anywhere these days, do you? In the middle of a global pandemic.
Exactly.
You should be very, very particular about where you place your tongue.
Keep your tongue to yourself. I think Boris should have that as one of his slogans, shouldn't he?
He should have it on his lectern, shouldn't he?
He should have it.
No tongues. He should have, shouldn't he?
Yeah, I think it sums it up because that comes. So you can't. You have to be socially distanced, don't you? To so your tongue can't come into contact with things.
Oh yeah, if you're 1.5 meters away from someone, I think you'd have to have a hefty tongue, wouldn't you? I mean, Gene Simmons might be able to do it from Kiss.
He had a tongue and a half, didn't he?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Okay. So, that's it really. Apart from
guilty pleasure song.
Oh yeah. Have you got one?
Well, you've gone outside of what we agreed, which was that last week would be our last one. But fortunately, because I'm good at thinking on my feet, I have actually thought of one in the 5 minutes since the 5 minute notice you gave me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I like to keep you on your toes.
I know.
I do like it. Keeps you sharp. You should be thanking me.
I don't really want to be sharp at 10:15 at night. I want to be very blunt.
Well, my guilty pleasure is The Lion Sleeps Tonight by Tight Fit.
Oh, my God. Sorry, you must be joking. You must be joking. This must just be for effect. I don't believe you like that. You can't.
I love it. I think it's not only is it a very bad song, but Tight Fit, who were just a thrown together group that weren't even singers, they were just models.
So you don't like it?
To parade on top of the pops. No, I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great tune, a great version.
You genuinely think that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is just depressing.
So come on, I've coughed now. What's yours?
I'm not surprised you spent so many years feeling lonely. You bloody deserved it. Well, actually, the one that I've chosen is, do you remember the Phil Collins song Separate Lives?
Oh, no. Go on.
Now,
Go on.
Hang on. Wait a minute. I would accept that Phil Collins one. I think it was a duet, wasn't it, with someone, because it was from a film. I would choose that version of Separate Lives if I need to, because that certainly is a guilty pleasure, because it's a lovely song. But I didn't realise that was a song that was written actually by Stephen Bishop. And then I heard the original version of that song, which I suppose isn't a guilty pleasure, because actually it's quite cool to know that and to have heard that. So I would have chosen the Stephen Bishop version, but I will accept that the guilty version of the two is the Phil Collins one. And I am going to put my hand up and say, yes, I do like a song that was recorded by Phil Collins. And definitely that would be the only time you hear me say that.
And it would be and I don't want to hear that ever again. Certainly, I have my record collection and CD collection is Genesis and Genesis-related artists free. There's none of that going on at all. They're one of my pet hates.
Yeah, I'm not a massive Genesis fan. Although I'm just thinking now, there's a Genesis album that I think probably would be hated by Genesis purists called Duke. And I can't remember what the first track on that album is, but I really like that too. So there's another Phil Collins song that I like. Is that also a guilty pleasure?
You should just feel guilty. There's no pleasure in that at all.
I've got to find out what that song is now. Duke. Oh, yeah, of course it is. It's Turn It On Again. That was a single, wasn't it? I don't think I'll be allowed to play this. I'll infringe copyright now, won't I?
You've infringed my copyright.
Yeah, that's a good song as well. But anyway, there we are.
That's enough now, isn't it? You've got a load to cut out. You've got loads to edit down and cut out, haven't you, now?
Yeah, don't worry. I'll be able to do it. It would be easier to do it now that we've done this tonight rather than if we'd done it tomorrow night, because then I wouldn't have time at all. I'll probably have to leave all your rooms in. Okay,
and West Ham won 4-0 last night. I know you're disassociating yourself with the
I'm not interested in football anymore. It's given me too much pain over the years and I'm done with it.
I know, but it's just that little... just that little 4-0 win. It just gave me so much pleasure.
Yeah, but they're manipulating you, Martin. They're bringing you up. Then the next thing you know, they'll be losing 4-0 at home to Bury.
They've gone out of existence, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I still wouldn't put that past West Ham.
Yeah, well, I'm still emotionally attached to them. I can't help it.
Well, maybe we should do an episode on that.
Right, I'm going to bed now. It's way too late.
Too. Yeah, me too.
Take it well easy.
See you anon.
Laters. Bye.
Bye.
Did you get that burp in at the end?
Come on, I don't think I've stopped recording.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work, visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, you can find us on our Facebook page at Sideways Podcast, or you can email us to let us know what you think of the show or with any questions that you might have. And finally, we want to thank you for listening and ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.
I'm sorry, I really didn't see you there, staring into the white sky, looking for answers. You're small, smaller than I remember. Might be the light, like winter through a dark lens. And these are notes I wrote to myself, not to anyone else. Together gather, is that what you said? And if you walk slowly, you don't get to where you don't wanna be. And these are notes I wrote to myself.